Now on KCRA 3.
After almost a year of waiting, this.
We will not charge these officers with any criminal liability related to the shooting death and the use of force on Stephon Clark.
A second-by-second account.
When the officers yelled, "Show me your hands," he did not stop. He continued to advance.
Explosive new information on Stephon Clark's actions leading up to the shooting.
The Clark family outraged.
It was homicide, and they should be charged.
And still demanding justice.
Shame on the DA, shame on her.
The community and faith leaders rallying behind the Clark family.
We shall overcome someday.
Calling for justice and change.
How to best prevent these tragedies from happening over and over and over again.
This is KCRA 3. We begin with breaking news.
There is no question that the death of Stephon Clark was a tragedy, not just for his family, but for this community. My job as the district attorney is to make sure that we conduct a full, fair, and independent review of the shooting. That job means that I follow the facts and the law. We will not charge these officers with any criminal liability related to the shooting death and the use of force on Stephon Clark.
A big announcement from Sacramento District Attorney Anne Marie Schubert as she announces today that the 2 Sacramento police officers who shot and killed Stephon Clark will not be charged.
And the decision is causing heartbreak and outrage for the Clark family and many others in the Sacramento community.
They executed my son. They executed him in my mom's backyard. And it is not right. It is not right. However, the DA has shown us time and time again throughout her terms who she is and what she stands for, which is not fairness or justice. We've been sitting for a year patiently, allowing her an opportunity to do right, and she has failed us.
We learned a lot of new information today about the evidence uncovered in this case.
Today, the DA revealed much more about what led up to the shooting. For the first time today, she said DNA evidence shows that Stephon Clark broke car windows in his grandparents' neighborhood. That was the initial 911 call made to police by a neighbor. The DA also detailed how Clark smashed the sliding door of an elderly neighbor's home. She says she considered evidence showing Clark advanced toward officers moments before the shooting. And the most painful revelation to Clark's family, the DA revealed Clark was involved in a domestic violence incident and searched for information about how to commit suicide just prior to the shooting. We have team coverage of this breaking news from the investigation to the community reaction.
We begin with KCRA 3's Max Resnick. He joins us live in studio now with why the DA made this decision to not file charges. Max?
Brian Edie, good evening. DA Schubert says their investigation revolves around one question: was a crime committed by the officers who shot and killed Stephon Clark? Schubert reviewed that investigation over the course of an hour, one detailed here across 60 pages, and said they did not. District Attorney Anne Marie Schubert spent an hour going through her office's findings, one that included police-sworn body camera video, helicopter video, interviews, DNA evidence, an independent investigation, and more.
You must follow the law, whether you agree with that law or not.
For the first time, Schubert said the man seen running in the video, suspected of smashing car windows, is in fact Stephon Clark.
That DNA analysis and other physical evidence shows that that person who was walking down 29th Street was in fact Stephon Clark.
So much of the DA's explanation is about the moments leading up to the officers firing their guns and what was said during and after the shooting, what Schubert called spontaneous statements that the officers feared for their lives.
Those spontaneous statements became very critical for our review. You okay? You hit.
Both officers who fired on Clark in interviews with Sacramento Police and the Department of Justice described Clark as being in a shooting stance in the backyard of his grandparents' home with his arms extended, and that they saw a flash of light.
Officer Mercadal, in his statement, said that he saw a flash of light that he believed was a muzzle flash from a gun. Officer Robinette, in his statement, believed that the flash of light was reflecting off of a metallic object, a gun.
Next, Schubert said video shows Clark ran towards officers a distance of about 15 feet before officers shot and killed him.
He yelled, "Show me your hands, gun, gun, gun." But the helicopter video conclusively shows that Mr. Clark was, in fact, advancing on the officer.
In her analysis, Schubert also gathered information about Clark's state of mind in the days leading up to the shooting, including a report of domestic violence by the mother of Clark's children, taking multiple drugs, and searching the internet about how to commit suicide.
You can see that there were many things weighing heavily on his mind.
And after Schubert's team evaluated all the evidence,
was a crime committed? There's no question that a human being died. But when we look at the facts and the law, and we follow our ethical responsibilities, the answer to that question is no.
But she has a message for Clark's family and the community.
The fact that no criminal charges will be filed in this case does not diminish in any way the tragedy, the anger, the frustration that we've heard since the time of his death.
While discussing Clark's personal life, the drug use, domestic violence allegations, internet searches about suicide, she did not say this was a case of suicide by cop, but information that would be presented to a jury. Edie.
All right, Max, thank you. We head out now to Kevin Oliver. He's been with the Clark family today. Kevin.
That's right. We're here actually at the Sacramento Police Department, where some of the demonstrators have been throughout the evening. And one criticism of the district attorney that's been brought up not only by the demonstrators out here, but also by the family of Stephon Clark, was the district attorney's decision to reveal some very personal information about Clark, personal problems prior to the shooting. Take a listen.
She explained to me, that she wanted to explain the reports that had came out because of the phone messages. And I just told her that, hey, I'm a parent. I knew my son. He didn't withhold anything from me, so I knew what was going on in his life. And that has nothing to do with the officer's actions.
She mentioned that he talked about killing himself, and I just think that all of that was very personal, and it had nothing to do with officers shooting him in his grandma's backyard while he was holding his phone. And it had nothing to do, those officers didn't know any of those things prior to killing him. So I think it was just irrelevant, and it was unnecessary, and it was very disrespectful.
Now, the crowd here has diminished quite a bit since earlier this evening. In the past hour, though, members of the group here set fire to a blue, black, and white flag, a flag that's been used by police in past police functions. Now, people told personal stories of fear, intimidation, and racism. But the overwhelming story here was outrage at the decision by the district attorney's office and members of the group here calling for change. Reporting live from Sacramento, Kevin Oliver, KCRA 3 News.
So, Kevin, let's talk about the protesters who are there right now. What are you hearing from them?
A lot of them just want to see something happen. They say they've been waiting for a year. They were hoping that the district attorney would come back with a different decision, and that didn't happen. Some of them were surrounding each other, reading poems and talking about different personal events that they had gone through. But they really want to see something happen. They want to see some kind of change, whether that's legislatively or with this particular case, possibly with the Attorney General and his investigation into the shooting. But they want to see something happen. I don't think that they sound very satisfied with some of the changes that the city has made in the past year.
And city leaders have been promising more changes will be made. So this is an ongoing discussion. Thank you so much, Kevin.
And Sacramento Mayor Darrell Steinberg also weighed in on the district attorney's decision today.
And today he called for the legal standard for deadly force to be changed.
Was the outcome wrong? Was the outcome unacceptable? The answer to both questions is yes.
Let's head out to KCRA 3's Vicki Gonzalez now with more on the city's response and also some of that community reaction. Vicki.
Edie, there were two back-to-back events held here, one with the mayor, city council, and two pastors, another with a very large coalition of faith leaders. The overarching message is that the district attorney's decision was expected, that Stephon Clark should be alive today, and his death will be a catalyst for change.
We are not afraid.
As our former mayor once said to me so often, Sacramento is not Ferguson, but yes, we are, just like Ferguson.
We shall overcome.
We are hurt, and a mother has lost her son, and the entire Clark family structure has changed forever.
I do believe we shall.
Police officers have a very tough job. They put their lives on the line, and at the same time, they have an awesome power to take a life.
We shall live in peace.
Stephon Clark was murdered twice. Wow. First by the police officers who murdered him in his grandmother's own backyard. Then again today by our district attorney, who assassinated his character.
And then all of his personal information today was dragged out. He was publicly humiliated post-mortem.
Oh, deep in my heart.
Messages of healing go out to the community. I ask you, how does a community continue to hear healing when we have not seen justice? We don't even realize what this justice looked like. So how can you tell me to heal?
We shall live in peace someday.
Now, from both of these events, there are two significant things that the community is focusing on. The first one, and Mayor Steinberg touched upon this multiple times, involves use of force laws in California that date back to 1872, more than a century old. He is supporting legislation that's currently making its way through the state capitol that would tighten those use of force laws, essentially making officers only able to use deadly force when absolutely necessary and when there is no other alternative. Now, following that, there is also a focus on what will happen with these officers in terms of disciplinary action, and in the most extreme case, being fired from the department. That'll come from Chief Hahn. He will refer that to the city manager following an internal review. Live at City Hall, Vicki Gonzalez, KCRA 3 News.
Okay, Vicki, thank you for the update.
Well, we've got the man who can answer those questions, and we'll be talking about discipline in a moment here. Our police chief, Daniel Hahn, joining us. And let's start with just your reaction to the DA's announcement today. Did you get any advance notice?
I got a few hours advance notice, yes. Well, and I've always known that today is not going to change certain things, regardless of what the district attorney's findings were. And the main thing is that the Clark family lost a loved one, a son, a grandson, a father, and regardless of what the decision was today, that wasn't going to bring him back. And I don't think any, at least me, can fully understand that the pain that they've been through. So first and foremost, I knew today wasn't going to drastically change that or bring somebody back, but it is another step in the process, so I'm thankful for that.
Well, you know that there's a lot of anger out there in the community, and really instead of summing up what people are saying, we want to bring the direct words from the head of Sacramento's Black Lives Matter group, and that's Tanya Faison. So here she is.
He needs to recommend that those officers are fired. You know, you're our first black police chief, and when you first became our chief, I felt sorry for you because this city kills a lot of people, and now it's on you. And, you know, he has a responsibility to the community. He always claims that he grew up in Oak Park and, you know, that he's lived this life to where he could relate to the community. Well, this is your opportunity to show us that you can relate to the community. You need to have those officers fired. You need to take a stand.
So what's your answer in terms of discipline, possibly firing them? I know there have been also calls just if they were going to stay with the department to never have them in that neighborhood again.
Well, the discipline is going to depend on the facts and the review, our review that comes after the district attorney and the attorney general. And that has to be based on our policy at the time and what they actually did. And so that's been my commitment from the very beginning. It hasn't changed just because today the district attorney released her findings. I've been committed to that from the beginning.
Okay, so we're just not to that place in the timeline at this point.
Correct. We did the preliminary review, which is really an overview of our organizational performance on this incident, and that's where things like the body camera policy, or excuse me, the mute function of the body camera, our emergency order that we released shortly after, and then the foot pursuit policy, things like that. And then once we get through the district attorney's finding, and then soon, hopefully, the Attorney General's finding, then we'll be able to do the final review.
Have you talked to those two officers today? after this announcement was made that they will not face criminal charges?
I have not talked to them after the decision today. No.
What have they told you up to this point? Or what have you told them?
Well, we've talked about procedure and things like that early on and what they would be doing. They haven't been back on the street since then, so I've talked to them about that. I know they're concerned. I mean, they've, you know, things like their wedding and things like that, so they're concerned about their well-being and their family's well-being.
When you say their wedding, I don't know that information.
Well, one of the officers got married a few months ago, and there were some folks that crashed his wedding.
Okay, so just concerns about his safety and
Yes,
his family's safety.
correct.
And you know, there's a lot of anger right now being directed against all of your officers. So how do you deal with that? What do you tell all your officers?
Well, I mean, right now things are heightened, but they also have a lot of people that speak to them about appreciating them. But yeah, it's been tough. The protests have been very hectic and a lot of emotion. It's been going on for almost a year now. And but I think not only I definitely am proud of the way they've handled themselves, the officers in general, over these protests, but I think our community can be proud. We've seen things go differently in other places, and for the most part, the protests have been fairly mellow. There has been some violence and some property damage, but not on widespread scale. And at the same time, the officers have remained professional and haven't overreacted. And I think that's a lot of the reason why we've had the results we've had over the last month during these protests or demonstrations, that we haven't had anybody severely hurt or major property damage. And I think a lot of that is not the officers for sure, but also some community leaders that have stood in the gap and stood between various protesters or stood between the protesters and the officers. And so, you know, I was born and raised and lived my whole life in this community. I love this city. I love this police department. And I think it's Sacramento showing its true self over the last year on how we've handled these very emotional situations. And I look forward to how we're going to continue to improve as a city.
You mentioned that you also have people in the community who are thanking your officers, and I do think it's important that we don't paint any particular community with one broad brush, including demonstrators. We heard from one community leader earlier today, who was in tears thanking you and thanking the mayor for taking steps to change police policy in the wake of the shooting. It brings us to the protests. We see everyone from families with little kids protesting to people maybe from out of town who don't have great intentions. So what have you done in anticipation of this decision coming out today to keep people safe?
Well, I think as we're living in these moments over the last year, it's sometimes easy to forget some of the changes. And this department and this community has gone through tremendous amount of change over the last year and a half, from body cameras on every officer to releasing footage within 3 days to the release, like even today, of our timeline of the significant benchmarks during the investigation and our subsequent releasing of more information after the Attorney General is done. That's, as far as I know, that's never been done anywhere. And so it's great in terms of transparency, so the people that want to see the facts can go there and see it. But at the end of the day, it still doesn't get to the heart of this issue. And that's what we continue to need to work on. In terms of the protests, it's not lost on me that we get a lot of phone calls when protests go on of people saying, you should arrest everybody in the street. They're blocking me. I have to go pick up my kid or daycare or practice. And so at the same time, we have to weigh people's safety and people's right to speak, and what would it take to be able to do some of those things. At the same time, there's people on the other side saying every one of them need to be arrested. And so we have every incident commander on each one of those scenes has to weigh freedom of speech, all the rights of folks, plus how dangerous it would be to do something at that moment versus the safety of other people. And I think our department and our incident commanders on each one of those incidents have done a very good job of balancing that. At the same time, people are very angry a lot of times that they were stopped in the middle of the street. Right. But if the worst thing that happens is some people are inconvenienced and aren't injured, I think we're doing okay, but we will continue to weigh each one of those each time.
What kind of staffing do you have tonight, and what are you watching for at this point?
Well, as you know from doing this so long, we have to prepare for the worst case scenario, and hope that it doesn't happen. And so we are prepared for, things that we've seen in other cities that we don't typically see in our city. And today we haven't seen that, and I hope moving forward we don't. But we're prepared for that, and we've been not only prepared from a law enforcement specific perspective, but we've been working a long time with community leaders in different neighborhoods, preparing for the moment that we're in right now. And I think, at least for today, I think it's paying off.
Okay. Chief Hahn, thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate you and the transparency that you've shown in doing a lot of these interviews. So thank you. Brian?
Community organizations have been planning for this day for weeks, and they are coming together now to give people a safe place to voice their feelings about today's announcement by the district attorney. They have opened up a number of safe zones across the city where people can come and just talk. In the Max Baer Park on 35th Avenue, as well as the Oak Park Community Center on MLK Jr. Boulevard, will be open until 7 this evening. The Greater Sacramento Urban League on Marysville Boulevard will be open until 8 tonight, and there are more safe zones that could be announced in the future. We will continue to follow this story about the decision in the Stephon Clark case, both on air and online. You can check out a timeline of the story. We have a link to all of the evidence that was posted today by District Attorney Schubert, and you can also sign up to get push alerts for breaking news through our KCRA3 mobile app. Still to come, Dirk Verdorn joins us with a look at the weather and also a look at when we can expect some more rain.
We certainly started our day with a soggy Saturday. Let's check in with our meteorologist, Dirk Verdorn.
Well, the rain started to taper off here in the valley, so we are catching a little bit of a break there, but it's not completely done. We're expecting some more showers to develop as we go through tonight and on into tomorrow morning. Right now, it's dry over Sacramento, but the ground's still wet from all the rain we've received. 53 degrees currently in Sacramento, 55 in Stockton, 54 in Modesto and Lake Tahoe currently. 37 degrees with some showers working their way over the crest of the Sierra. Wind speeds are fairly light, generally below 10 miles per hour. Daytime highs today in the 50s for Marysville and Sacramento, 55 in Fairfield, 60 though in Stockton, and 63 was the daytime high in Modesto, 54 Auburn, and Truckee and Lake Tahoe both had a daytime high of about 41 degrees today. Rain, this is what we've seen over the past 24 hours. You can see over a half an inch in Yuba City, close to 3/4 of an inch in Sacramento and Stockton, and over that in Modesto with 8300ths. We had over almost a 3/4 of an inch in Quincy, Auburn close to half an inch, but look at Columbia reporting 2.16 inches of rain in just the past 24 hours. Now, we still do have some areas of rain. We've been tracking these showers across Tuolumne County. You can see that to the south of Sonora. A little light rain is heading your way in Sonora. Angels Camp catching a little bit of a break. San Andreas and McCollum Hill currently seeing some light rain, as well as West Point and Pine Grove. Pioneer also seeing some light rain, and that does transition into some snow as you make your way up the hill. But just some light flurries and showers. Nothing that's really going to stack up or be a problem if you have any travel plans, although it's just going to be kind of soggy as you go driving up and through the mountains. This weather system is going to continue to affect us through your Sunday. While we're not expecting solid rain or steady rain, we will see some scattered showers throughout the day on Sunday and on into Sunday evening. So starting off tonight, more showers move in. You can see those showers coming up from the south, and this is early Sunday morning, 2 a.m. A little heavier rain in through the mountains. Expect to have those showers continue through your Sunday morning and on into the afternoon. Expect to have conditions that eventually are going to dry out. Those will get past Sunday night and into Monday. That's when we start to see less and less of the rain and the snow, and we start to see some breaks in the cloud cover. Even a little bit of sunshine is expected Monday afternoon. That'll help to bump temperatures into the lower 60s. So here's a look at your 7-day forecast. Again, on and off again, rain on Sunday. Temperatures in the upper 50s. We're looking at lower 60s with some sunshine on Monday mixed with clouds, so it's not going to be a completely sunny day. The clouds return on Tuesday with that rain developing later on in the afternoon. Rain through Wednesday, showers on into Thursday, a break on Friday and Saturday. So again, we do have some more rain in the forecast, but we also have some breaks in between, which is something we definitely need after these storms come through.
Got to dry out a little bit.
Yeah, we do.
All right, thanks. Coming up, sheriff's deputies searching for the person responsible for stabbing a woman at a state park, where it happened, and who the deputies say dropped the woman off at the hospital. That's next.
We continue to follow the developments on the decision not to charge the officers involved in the shooting of Stephon Clark.
And right now, we want to take a check back of the other day's headlines, though. Investigators have made an arrest in a murder in Lodi earlier this week. 45-year-old Marcus Troll Sr. was arrested yesterday in Acampo. Troll is accused of shooting a man in the head Wednesday night on East Vine Street in Lodi. Police say this does not appear to be a random shooting. However, the police did not explain why they think the man was shot.
An investigation's underway after someone opened fire on 2 men in North Highlands last night. They were shot as they were walking down Santa Fe Way at around 9:30. A witness says they heard a car horn honking, then multiple shots. Witnesses saw a gray Honda Accord with 3 men inside driving away from that scene. Right now, one of those 2 men who were shot is in critical condition. Deputies are still working to figure out what may have led up to that shooting.
The San Joaquin County Sheriff's Office is investigating a stabbing at a state park. Deputies say a woman was stabbed several times at Caswell State Park this morning. Investigators say she was then dropped off at a local hospital by the same person who is suspected of stabbing her. She is in critical condition tonight, and investigators are asking anyone who has information to call them.
Back now to the reaction to the decision not to charge the officers in the shooting of Stephon Clark. And the question everyone seems to have tonight is what happens next?
We will hear from Sacramento pastor Les Simmons. He has been dealing not only with the Stephon Clark case, but other police shooting cases across the country. What he thinks will need to be done in order for the community to heal.
From KCRA3, this is breaking news.
The first question that we have in this analysis, was there probable cause for the officers to stop and detain Mr. Clark? The answer to that question is yes. They had the authority, the lawful authority, to stop and detain him. That was based upon the information provided by the citizen. It was based upon the fact that there were multiple car windows broken, based upon the information from the helicopter that he had just smashed a residential home window and was now seen fleeing into a backyard of somebody else. The law requires that we decide or we judge the reasonableness of an officer's actions based upon the circumstances confronting them at that moment of time. We must recognize that they are often forced to make split-second decisions.
We continue to follow that breaking news on the shooting death of Stephon Clark. The Sacramento DA announcing today that they will not be filing charges against the 2 officers who shot 22-year-old Clark almost exactly a year ago.
Community leaders and the Clark family are responding to the DA's findings today. But first, let's take a look back at everything that has led up to Clark's shooting and what happened afterward.
That shooting and the events that followed sparked a national conversation. In Sacramento, simmering stresses about race and policing turned to frustration that spilled into the streets.
We understand that there's been an officer-involved shooting. It happened maybe an hour and a half, 2 hours ago.
Little was known the night of March 18th, 2018, when a call went out that officers had shot a man in a South Sacramento neighborhood. 3 days later, police would release this video that raised questions, anger, and demonstrations. It all started with the call of a person breaking into cars.
Can we check your backyard?
In the initial minutes of the call, the investigation seemed routine. Until it wasn't. The Sacramento Sheriff's helicopter guiding them, 2 Sacramento police officers ran to catch the man they believed was breaking into cars. The suspect moved from a driveway, climbing over a fence, and, unbeknownst to officers, into his grandmother's backyard. Police say they thought he was holding a gun.
Show me your hands! Gun!
In a period of just 5 seconds, police fired 20 shots. What happened in those 5 seconds and why would become the focus of anger, outrage, and a comprehensive investigation. The man they shot was 22-year-old Stephon Clark. Clark had dealt with police before, a charge for robbery, one for domestic violence, but nothing involving a shooting. The night he was shot, Clark did not have a gun. He was holding a cell phone. The father of 2 died shortly after the officers opened fire.
I want whoever responsible to be held accountable.
A day after the videos were released, the Clark family demanded answers.
Say his name!
And Black Lives Matter held a protest at City Hall. It didn't end there. One contingent marched to Interstate 5, blocking the rush hour commute.
He gave us cancer.
Others knocked over metal detectors and locked arms, blocking the entrance to the Golden One Center, effectively canceling the Kings game for the night.
Well, we know that tensions are high right now and people are upset. So, it's a difficult situation and, we didn't want to make things worse.
It would not be the last protest. 24 hours later, March 23rd, the protesters hit the streets again, roaming block to block, intimidating drivers, and verbally sparring with police as officers blocked their attempts to take over I-5 again. Some bystanders were hit with water. Protesters jumped on cars. That night, protesters attacked a police car, and one protester was hit by a sheriff's vehicle.
We need to make sure that our city remains in some sort of calmness while the protests go on and things like that, because the last thing anybody needs, whether it's the community, the police department, is for more tragedies to happen.
By the 27th, 9 days after the shooting, Attorney General Xavier Becerra said his office would provide an independent review.
My team and I at the California Department of Justice will do everything in our power to ensure that this investigation is fair, thorough, and impartial.
That same night, at a city council meeting, Stefan's brother, Stevante Clark, jumped onto the dais, stopping the meeting.
This should not have ever happened. This is not a Sacramento fight anymore. This is a national fight.
Clark's funeral brought the Reverend Al Sharpton and filled Bayside Church.
Both of these are the same.
Days after the funeral, it was revealed the Clark family commissioned an independent autopsy. Their results showed that of the 20 shots fired, Clark was hit 8 times.
And the proportion of the bullet and the injuries caused made him shove him around.
But the official autopsy by the Sacramento County Coroner's Office disputed the independent autopsy, saying Clark was hit 7 times, 3 of those in the back. It also listed a litany of drugs and alcohol in Clark's system at the time he was shot.
There are 4 pathologists that worked on this very elaborate and thorough autopsy report. And then in addition to that, there was an independent pathologist that also reviewed this report.
The shooting sparked weekly protests outside the district attorney's office. Black Lives Matter asking for an indictment of the 2 officers who shot Clark.
We cannot have situations where the common refrain after the fact is, "I thought he had a gun."
The mayor, police chief, and city council changed some police policies in the wake of the shooting. Public safety would be the key factor in a new foot pursuit policy.
This policy, I think, will allow officers to think a little bit more strategically.
As it turned out, the 2 officers had shut off their microphones after the Clark shooting. That won't be allowed anymore. Meantime, the Attorney General turned over the findings of their investigation to the district attorney on January 16th of this year. The DA said there was so much material they would need to delay their investigation to process everything.
From my understanding is things were supposed to happen, but they did not happen. So that's why we want all them questions and concerns to go straight to the attorneys.
The Clark family filed a wrongful death suit against the city, asking for $20 million in damages. And the California Department of Justice issued another report, this one public, on Sacramento police use of force policies. The report contains more than 40 recommendations.
Help create a police culture that demonstrates that effective policing and respectful policing go hand in hand.
The Attorney General's report spelled out how officers were trained to be aggressive. The DOJ suggests stopping chokeholds and shooting at or from moving vehicles, and emphasizes what they termed a guardian model of policing instead of a warrior mindset.
Meaning that officers emphasize communication over commands and cooperation over compliance.
All this in the wake of 20 shots fired at Stefan Clark and an investigation nearly a year in the making.
We look at all of it, everything. We ask our question that we started out with again. And that question is, was a crime committed?
Until today, when the Sacramento District Attorney announced her decision.
There's no question that a human being died. But when we look at the facts and the law, and we follow our ethical responsibilities, the answer to that question is no. And as a result, we will not charge these officers with any criminal liability related to the shooting death and the use of force on Stefan Clark.
Sacramento Mayor Darrell Steinberg has apologized for the death of Stephon Clark and said it should not have happened. The mayor appointed Stevante Clark, Stephon Clark's brother, to a committee that's in charge of Measure U sales tax dollars. That commission will use the money in underserved communities.
Joining us right now is Pastor Les Simmons from the South Sacramento Christian Center Church, also Area Congregations Together, a group of faith leaders who've been really working on issues related to the Clark case for close to a year now. Right. Earlier today, you were at City Hall. He was with a group of faith leaders to offer a prayer to the community and also to the Clark family. And in addition to prayers, you've been working on some very specific goals, and we actually have those up on a screen for you so you can kind of follow along. These are things you've been working on, and let's start with discipline for those officers.
Right. I think thank you for covering the story today. It's been as you can imagine, a very challenging, emotional day for the Clark family, as well as for all the Sacramentans, right? And what we've been working with Sacramento ACT area congregations is to really get a gauge of what justice looks like, both from the family and from Sacramento ACT faith leaders. And as you know, it's over 56 congregations making up over 60,000 members. And what we have heard is that we no longer want these officers policing our communities. We want to strengthen the police commission that currently exists in the city of Sacramento, as well as increase the ability, use of force policy here in Sacramento that mirrors that of some of the state legislation around AB 392. We think if those things are implemented, it would not only help our community heal, it would lead the nation of what justice looks like in these moments that we see here locally as well as nationally as well. And
the bottom line of that is a deadly force would be justified only if there were no other options available.
Correct.
That's the bottom line.
Correct. And we heard the AG say that guardian and not warrior, right? That's a powerful thing, to be able to issue verbal commands. I think that if the verbal command and the guardian and not warrior style of policing was implemented on March 18th, 2018 at 9 o'clock, Stephon Clark would still be here today.
So you had said earlier today that you did not believe that this was justice, what we heard from the district attorney today in her announcement that these officers would not be charged. And you said not on a national level, not on a state level, and not on a local level. What did you mean by that?
Yes, this is, again, we saw Stephon Clark die twice. We saw him die March 18th, 2018, and we saw him die March 2nd, 2019 today, and how he was referred to, and then in no accountability of these officers. And that's what I mean by that. This is no justice for the Clark family and no justice for the side of what we call beloved community, right? Dr. King lifted up the whole idea of beloved community, which stands on justice, which stands on love, which stands on belonging, and this is not that. And I think we have an opportunity as Sacramento to lead not only the state but the nation in redefining what justice looks like for these incidents that we often see too much of.
We did hear new information, quite a bit of new information from the district attorney today as she was outlining the evidence she weighed to make her decision. So did any of that change your view of this case?
It actually did not in no way, shape, or form, because she used the platform to build a case of almost like Stephon Clark was on trial. But instead of the two officers, she pointed out some things that I feel and the community feels did not need to be pointed out, and put the focus on some other set of scenarios instead of on the fact that he was killed. These two officers fired 8 shots that entered his body, 20 rounds were fired, and there are no criminal charges filed against them.
At the same time, you were telling me earlier you were out with protesters today, and you've seen SAC PD doing some things right.
Well, I think throughout this year, we have seen a series of actions and protests that are built on love, built on belonging, built on justice, and there have been no violence in all the protests, no violence in all the actions. As a matter of fact, there hasn't even been any arrests made, from my understanding, on all of it. And I think that's both a credit to the community and the formation and the organizing and how people hold space, as well as to local law enforcement, referring to Sacramento Police Department, and understanding how to help community process these kind of challenging moments of action and protest, right? And I think they've learned a lot on how to show up in these spaces. I also think they can also teach a couple other departments on how to do that as well. Now where we can use their leadership is holding these officers accountable on a local level.
Let's go back to the planning that went into anticipating this decision coming out today. Some leaders had set up these safe spaces and places in the community where if you felt angry or lost or you just wanted to talk about ways to move forward, these were places to go. And I think some of them at this point are just about to close, but they were open for much of the afternoon. What do you think of that as a strategy, and are there other things that you think can be done to help this community heal?
I think everybody's doing what they can to both help our community heal through this, help us get to the other side of this. I would say we need as many spaces, open congregations and listening and healing spaces to help process this, trauma spaces to treat the trauma of it, just as much as we also need the spaces around justice that really are helping to redefine what that looks like for us locally now that we've heard from the DA. I think the healing cream for this, and that's the word we'll use, the healing cream for this is justice, is accountability, and this community has lifted up those 4 values of what we feel justice looks like.
Pastor Simmons, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Brian?
Well, shortly after today's announcement, Stephon Clark's mother said the family's fight for justice was just beginning, and there are a number of legal issues that remain unsettled in the case. Joining us now to talk more about that is KCRA3 legal expert, defense attorney Bill Portanova. So, Bill, this news conference today had the feeling a little bit of a trial. The district attorney really laid out the case step by step. What do you think she was trying to accomplish by doing it that way?
Today, we saw District Attorney Anne Marie Schubert as if she was in a trial herself. That was an opening statement and a closing argument all put together. And it appeared to me that she wanted to make sure that the entire public heard every detail that they would listen to for over an hour. She spoke as if she were presenting it to a jury. She told us what she was going to tell us and then described it and provided the evidence in support of it. Told us she wasn't going to make the decision to file criminal charges against these 2 officers. Told us about some of the legal problems and evidentiary problems that they would have if it went to trial. For example, the idea that Mr. Clark's state of mind was such that any defense attorney could use that to their advantage. She made a very compelling case that they did not have a criminal case to be made. She specifically said, whatever happens in the civil court, this has no bearing, but there's certainly not enough evidence for a criminal charge.
Now, Schubert released a lot of sensitive and personal information today about Clark and what was happening in his life in the days that led up to the shooting. And she talked about a domestic violence report, text messages with the mother of his children, searches about suicide. The Clark family and their supporters are pretty upset that all that is being made public today. Can you explain why Schubert might have felt the need to put all that out there today?
Well, that was heartbreaking for everybody to listen to, because he was clearly a young man in a lot of pain with a lot of personal issues going on at that moment. And it's not simply put in to be cruel. The reality is that evidence would be used by any defense attorney in any case that she would have brought against those officers. And there is substantial information in the evidence that there was thoughts of suicide, investigating methods of suicide, threatening to commit suicide, and providing photographs of himself with the pills and so forth, coupled with forensic evidence demonstrating that when confronted by police, he swore at them and moved 15 feet closer to them. She did not say this was a suicide by cop. She can't say that because she can't prove it. But there is plenty of evidence that any defense attorney could use to create reasonable doubt. And that's why it was part of today's record.
So no criminal charges filed by the county. That doesn't mean this is over, though, for the 2 officers involved in the shooting, Bill. They could still be disciplined or fired. Can you explain that process and some of the factors that will be involved there?
Yes, there are so many levels of law that apply to this situation. The criminal is the most important, obviously, because it deals with the crime of homicide. Here it was a justifiable homicide, apparently, and therefore not chargeable. There is also civil law, where you get sued in federal court for violations of civil rights. That's ongoing. That will allow the case to be developed in civil law. And then there's administrative law. And this is where the officers have to face disciplinary proceedings within their own department. Did they follow all the administrative protocols and the regulations and their training? Did they follow their training? We don't know, because these are confidential personnel matters at this point. But we can expect that we will be hearing about that sometime soon, once the dust settles on the criminal investigation.
Bill, one more quick question for you. We also know the Attorney General, Javier Becerra, has his own open investigation. What will he be looking for, and what kind of charges might that bring?
The Attorney General of the state of California is the top law enforcement officer in the state. He can second guess the district attorney, make the decision to file the case on his own, bring his own people, and prosecute it right here in Sacramento Superior Court. The Attorney General is the #1 prosecutor in the state over all 58 counties. I don't think he will on this evidence, but technically he has that power.
Okay, well, we have not yet heard from Javier Becerra on that today, so we will await his reaction. Thank you, Bill.
Thank you.
And that announcement by the district attorney will be putting the practices and policies of police departments in the spotlight. Gulston Dart is here now with a law enforcement expert to explore when it's legal to use this kind of force.
Well, joining me right now is Ryan Getty. He is a professor of criminal justice at Sac State. He's an expert in police use of force, also officer-involved shooting investigations, and you've been involved in those investigations. You're also ex-law enforcement. So we've had a chance to talk, and I asked you earlier, what surprised you about the DA's announcement, and you said there was one thing that really did surprise you.
Much like all the other people, I was surprised that the criminal history was brought out and some of the things that went on prior to the shooting. And I understand kind of why she announced this, but I'm still not sure that she quite made a difference between we're only investigating for probable cause and we're looking into the mind of the person at the time.
Right. And again, I mentioned that you have been involved with officer-involved shooting investigations, and looking back now on her comments talking about when the officers engaged Stephon Clark, they said gun, 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 they pulled back, they looked back around, and then she showed the picture where it looks like it was a flash, something that the officers discerned as possibly light reflecting off of a gun. Let's talk about the split-second decisions that have to be made by police officers in a situation like that.
It happens so quickly, and police officers are trained in how to use their weapons and to recognize different types of threats. But once you have low-light situations and people moving, and the officers had just come off running and their stress level was up, so you've got the kind of the tunnel vision and the hearing starts to go and the fine motor skills. Yeah.
What's that reaction like, though?
It has to be really quick.
Yeah.
It has to be. I mean, I've personally kind of equated it to a major league batter. You have just that much time to figure out whether to shoot or don't shoot. It's tough.
And back on the officers again, you've served for years in various police forces. When an officer is involved in a shooting like this where someone dies, what does that do to them? What does that do to a person?
In my experience, they're never the same. I mean, they're always second guessing and have to go through all kinds of different debriefings, and then there's the lawsuits, and it never seems to end for them as well. So they're kind of living a long life of bitterness and anger. And
are there questions
anguish.
Like, should I have done that?
Always, always.
And you kind of described it almost as a death of a sort.
Yes, it's certainly their career death. Even if the chief can't find anything that they did policy and procedure-wise, I don't foresee any scenario where they would still be on the street and possibly even in law enforcement after this.
All right, Ryan Getty, appreciate your time and coming in on this Saturday. Appreciate that.
Thank you.
All right, guys, back to you.
All right, Colson, thank you.
And up next, we'll have a quick look at our weather. Dirk will let us know when we can expect more rain. We'll be right back. Checking back in with our meteorologist, Dirk Verdoren. We're in kind of a quick break right now with this rain.
Yeah, we have seen the rain kind of taper off a little bit, but we're still looking at some showers developing as we go through the night tonight. Right now, the winds are fairly light and temperatures are cooling, but it's a mild evening. Temperatures in the 50s for Sacramento, Stockton, and Modesto, Lake Tahoe currently 37 degrees. So we're still tracking a little bit of rain out there. We've been seeing these showers, especially cutting across the northern San Joaquin Valley. That's going to become a little bit more pronounced over the next couple of hours, but we're seeing showers near Rancho Calaveras. We're seeing it in Sonora as well as near Arnold. Right now, nothing in Arnold itself, but we've been seeing this near West Point and Pine Grove, seeing some rain and working your way up towards Kirkwood. South Lake Tahoe's had a few little showers, brief showers. No big accumulations are expected, but we will see some accumulation through the night tonight and into tomorrow. So this weather system, it's still going to be active. We're still looking at showers pretty much throughout your Sunday. Then we see a little bit of a break, and then we have another weather system out here that's going to move on through, and this is going to bring some more significant rainfall and snowfall to Northern California. So let's take a look at Futurecast, and you can see that we continue to see green across California as this weather system moves out. Just that flow still staying very, very moist, and so lots of moisture associated with it. And then this next weather system comes through, and we're timing it out starting as early as Tuesday afternoon through Wednesday and into Thursday. We'll continue to see showers as another area of low pressure with some colder air moves in at this point. So we are looking at still some active weather as we head through the next week. Futurecast, how much more rain can we expect? In valley spots, we're looking at just a few hundredths to a tenth or more in Sacramento and Stockton, a little bit more in Modesto and Yuba City. We could see a little bit more there with close to a half an inch or more. And then through the west slope of the Sierra, we're looking at anywhere from half an inch to over 1.5 inches of rainfall. And in the Sierra, upper elevations, again, mainly above 6,000 feet is where we're going to see accumulations anywhere from 5 to 10 inches up over the passes is what we're looking at as far as the snowfall is concerned. 7-day forecast, get showers on Sunday, dry on Monday, more rain developing on Tuesday and lasting through a good portion of your Wednesday. Still some showers on into Thursday, drying out Friday and Saturday, and much needed drying there for Friday and Saturday as we have another good storm that's going to hit us midweek this next week.
Oh, got it. Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
All right. We will have more on today's announcement not to charge the officers involved in the shooting death of Stephon Clark and the emotional reaction from faith-based leaders.
We end our newscast tonight with a quick wrap-up of our coverage of the DA's announcement that she will not bring charges against the Sacramento police officers who shot and killed Stephon Clark.
Today we learned a lot of new information and evidence, and that includes evidence that shows Stephon Clark was responsible for breaking car windows and a sliding door to a home. The DA also found the officers' verbal reaction caught on body camera shows they thought he had a gun. DA Anne Marie Schubert says Clark was in a state of despair after a domestic violence incident with the mother of his children 2 days earlier and had been researching ways to kill himself. The Clark family says they're outraged by the findings and that those details were released, but also say they don't believe it was necessary for the DA to reveal all that information about his mental state. We leave you tonight with a look at the mourning and the healing that continues in our community after today's announcement.
Earlier today, faith-based leaders joined together to sing an anthem of the civil rights movement, We Shall Overcome.